Today we're going to make stencils for our printmaking series using tracing paper and the images that we've already selected. So the things that you're going to need are a pencil, a half T-square that I made out of cut cardstock paper, a pair of scissors. These are all located next to the teacher computer desk, so you can all grab the things that you need when you sit down and start watching this video after the video is over. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna do is take the image that we've selected. So mine was Instagram, right? I also have an example of Adidas that I chose just for a little bit more of a complex image shape, right? So the Adidas logo looks like this, right? It's got a lot of lines. It's kind of like a flower or like lotus shape, I guess you'd say. So let's start with the Instagram. So the first thing that we want to do is place a piece of tracing paper. First thing that we want to do is place that piece of tracing paper over the top of our image, and we want to find the best spot on our tracing paper that it will fit. Now we're going to draw a box around it, and this box is going to be a guideline for all of your stencils, and it's going to be the border of your image, so it'll be the color of the paper that you choose. So I'm gonna frame my image. Let's see, I'll frame my image really close, so I'll have a big border around my image, okay? So I'm gonna use the paper T-square like this. I'm gonna try to make it as even as possible, right? Because I want my image to be nice and centered. Okay, so take my time. I'm gonna use the T-square. All right, so now I've got the first frame. Okay, I'm gonna erase these extra lines I made, and I've got my box, right? After you have your box, this is something that you're going to transfer onto that manila paper so that you can start your first stencil. This is part one of the project, okay? So you line up that piece of tracing paper with the manila paper and you retrace your box onto the paper for just some guidelines for yourself, right? Okay. All right, and then we are gonna use symmetrical cutting so that it's even. So you're gonna take your paper, you can fold it this way or this way, whichever makes sense. I'm gonna fold it hot dog style, okay? I'm gonna line up the corners as best I can, okay? And then I am going to cut. I'm gonna look at one part, one side, not both sides, just one side, and I'm gonna cut out my box, all right? Take my time. Okay. These are okay. So now I have the frame that is going to be around my image. So if you can imagine, the first stencil is just the first color I'm gonna put on the paper that's gonna hold this image. So wherever the white paper is showing, right, that's gonna be the opportunity to choose a different color in this white area around my image. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is create the second stencil. So I go back to my tracing paper, and I see, okay, what's the next shape that I need to highlight or outline? And usually, if it's an app, it's this big kind of oval, like this big rounded box that we have here, right? So I'm gonna trace that, okay? That's my second layer. And then my third layer would obviously be this. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing. We are gonna use our manila paper and retrace. I drew 2 different layers. Right now this tracing paper has 1, 2, 3 different layers on it. So I'm gonna choose the second layer, right? And so that's this line, and I'm gonna trace it onto my image. And I'm gonna make sure that that paper is really lined up, right? If it's off-centered, your images aren't gonna match up with your stencils. So you wanna make sure that it's really nice and centered. You've got all of the corners matching up that were matched up in the last one. And you retrace this, right? Same thing, you can use symmetrical cutting for this, or let's say it's more of a difficult image, like this Nike logo, right? So this is gonna be my second layer. I'm gonna do these leaves as my second layer. So what's most important is that you don't cut through the paper. Like, you can't come from one side and cut and get to the image. You have to come from the center and only cut out the shape that you need. So if you need an X-Acto knife, which can be very helpful for these things, it's located up at the teacher's desk. You gotta ask for it. There's only a few to go around. So I'm just gonna show with an X-Acto knife how to cut. Really important, it's a very sharp blade. You don't want to have any of your other fingers in the way, so your hand is always in front of the X-Acto blade while you cut, and you use the blade pulling slowly towards you, and you follow that pencil line that you want to cut out, okay? Same thing on this side, okay? If you have really small shapes, let's say like these really little stripes here, I have to use an X-Acto blade. I would be really impressed if you were able to do it with scissors, but you could try. It might not be very successful. All right, so you cut out, right? Oops, I broke my stencil. So you gotta be careful. Don't want that to happen. If your stencil breaks, it's a great thing to have happen right now. You can use some tape, right? To mend your stencil, because these are going to be used a bunch of times. So now I've got my, most of my shapes cut out, and I might mend my stencil like that, and maybe from the back, and then have to recut those pieces out, okay, with the X-Acto knife so that it stays together. All right, so I'm going to recut that out. All right. Perfect. All right. So now my stencil has been mended. I have the Adidas logo. Do you see it's coming out? Okay, so that's going to be like the third final layer, right? So then you will have the box that shows the color that you want to have on the outside, and then another stencil that shows that image that you want, okay? Take your time. If you have any questions, I'll be circling around.